Oh, I thought out of kindness someone would take these and hide them. Now, of course, I always respect questions. But anyway, oh my goodness. Okay, the first question I have here, doing the questions today, finishing them off, and then what other questions I have, other teachings we can fit in, I'll give those at the end. But anyway, somebody asked me, the first one I picked up, can you choose to tell us of these two stories? And the one was the American meeting the ghost of the royal family. And the second one is this is another one, the treasure story with the monk, the lawyer, the general and the king. These aren't just jokes, these are really powerful stories. And for many years I never accepted the existence of heavenly beings without evidence. And this is one of the most beautiful stories of like a heavenly being. There was this American who was in the Peace Corps, and after he finished the Peace Corps, he could stay a little bit longer on his visa, so he thought it'd be a great experience to actually try being a Buddhist monk for a short period. And so he didn't know how to do that. He was staying in a hotel in the north of Bangkok, and he asked the concierge. When he asked the concierge, how do I become a monk? He said, well look, you're an American, and I don't know. But he said he had seen a number of monks at this temple, Western monks, at this temple called BSWA. It's a royal temple. He said, so what I would do is get some food in one of these tiffin cans, that 3 or 4 little trays, metal trays, and get some nice food, and then offer it to the monks in the early morning when they come out on alms round. Try to choose an elderly monk, because they're more likely to be senior and to be able to tell you what to do. Once you've given something to them, then they will probably help you. So he said, what time should I go? Go early in the morning. So he went early in the morning, but too early in the morning. When he got there was no one around. And I don't know if you know that temple, Wat Bhawan. It is a royal temple. And even though it's in the middle of Bangkok, it's not really an area where there's many residences for lay people, mostly little businesses and stuff, and shops. So he went there anyway, and there was no one around. Sometimes you can't really imagine these days that you can go to anywhere in Bangkok and it's quiet. So anyway, he was walking up and down with his food, ready to offer to a monk, and he could see nobody. No one was there. All of the gates and doors of the monastery were all locked. So I was wandering up and down. And then finally, this Thai man came to see him and asked, what's he doing? And he said that he wanted to become a monk. And he was told to come here early in the morning, but everything was locked up. And this Thai man told him that you come too early. But this Thai man said, look, I have some keys, I can let you in. So he took him to what I always remember was called the Royal Gate, and that was usually locked, and the only people who could walk in that gate were royalty. It was a royal temple. But this layman had these keys, and he opened the gate and invited the Westerner in, and they went towards the main hall, kind of the Holy of Holies in that place. He turned on the electricity so it had some lights, and then he opened the main hall. And if you've ever been into those temples in Thailand, those old temples, they always have murals on the wall, like paintings. And you have to know the story before you can understand what the painting means. It's like a cartoon, this image, that image, that image, that image, but it just goes all over the place. Not just the left to the right or right to the left or up and down. You have to know the story, you can actually trace it. And sometimes well-known stories. And this Thai layman knew everything about these stories. It was so fascinating. And he's also had great timing, because when they got to the last of the stories on the murals inside the main hall of this temple, that was when he said, look, the monks will be out in 5 minutes, so go out the way you came in, through those gates, they're still open, and I will lock up. And he said, go to that second gate or somewhere, and then there'll be an elderly monk will come out, and then ask him, because he's the one who can help you. And that's what this Westerner did, thanked this Thai gentleman, and Thai gentleman locked up, and a few minutes later, this elderly monk came out from the door, which was he's supposed to wait by, and he asked him, he knew enough Thai, having been in the Peace Corps for a couple of years, and he asked him, he said, I want to become a monk. And so the Thai monk said, just wait here. And so the Thai monk went on arms round, and this layman, this American, gave some food into the monk's bowl. And then half an hour later, the Thai monk came back and invited him in to Wat Bhawan to start the process of ordination. You have to have lots of training. Lots of things, you know how to chant, know the basic rules. And so this American, okay, I'll say his name, I think it was David. Yeah, it began with a D anyway. And it's quite a few years ago. And this American, after a few days of getting the training, the beginning of the training, the monk who was assigned to him, to train him, he said, his English is not that good, and when he speaks Thai, my Thai is not that good. Can I have another person, another monk to train me? And that's when they said, the one we've assigned to you to train you, he is the best English speaker in the whole monastery. And then this Westerner then said, he can't be. Can I have that gentleman who met me the very first day, the one who took me into the hall and told me all about this? And that's when the interesting thing started to happen. They say, there is no layman who has that key. And you cannot turn the electricity on at that place. And that gate you went through is called the Royal Gate. Only royalty are allowed to walk through there. I remember being told that, even as a monk in those years, I couldn't walk through that gate. It was reserved for royalty. They said, when I walked through it, what did that guy look like? Well, he was wearing actually old style Thai clothes, not modern style. And so they were so interested in this story, they took this candidate to the head monk at the time, who was there, and that head monk was called Somdet Jhana Sangwara at that time. And just to go off on a tangent like I love doing, that monk, Somdet Jhana Sangwara, actually visited Perth many years ago. And we have a Buddha statue, which is, I think, in the, what do we call it, the kids' room next to the main hall? If you go in the main hall on the right, not one on the left, but on the right. The Kalyana Mitta room as well, the kids use it as well. But that Buddha statue which he offered is there, many, many years ago, before I came. But anyway, he was the head monk of Wat Bhawan at the time. So they took this American to see him, and halfway through the account, the abbot stopped him and said, "Can I please have the secretary to come in?" Because this was a very strange story. And so the secretary came in, and then he had to start from the very beginning so it could all be recorded. Because the truth of the matter was, no one at the time knew who that Thai gentleman could be who spoke such excellent English, who had the keys for things he shouldn't have the keys for, and could understand, all of the stories of those murals on the wall. He didn't just apparently just explain the stories. This Thai gentleman explained who actually constructed this, who donated it. It's for this person whose son died from cholera or something years and years ago, and they sponsored this. And even the abbot didn't know all those stories, and so he asked it all to be recorded. And when he finished recording it, then is when the abbot said, "What did he look like? Give me a description." And I think the American said something like, "I don't know, they all look the same." Except, he was not of a big stature and is wearing traditional Thai clothes. But give me some description. And that's when, according to the stories, I heard it, and had it confirmed, he said that man, he was just scratching his head apparently, and just looking. He said, "That's him there." There was a portrait of him in the abbot's office. It was the gentleman who actually constructed that temple. Also at the time he was a king, King Rama IV, who died many years ago. I don't make these stories up, I daren't. But I remember telling the story, I think it was in Singapore, at the Thai embassy. And that's when the ambassador stood up and he said, "Ajahn Brahm, so that is totally accurate. He was on the board of BSWA, the lay board, looking after the place. And he said, that's in our history, and I've read it, totally accurate." This American was met on the outside of this monastery by a former king of Thailand who died many years previously, 100 years or so. And that's why he could open the gate, which was called the Royal Gate, because he was a monarch before he was allowed through, and could switch on electricity where you're not supposed to be able to switch it on, and be able to open the doors of the main hall, and also to explain all of the history behind those old paintings. It was him. And as a result of that, eventually this man was ordained as a monk in Thailand. And the last I heard of him, he went over to the United States to practice. I haven't heard of him since. Sometimes it could be he disrobed, I don't know, but it could also be that he's still a monk. You have a new name when you become a monk, and also he wants to avoid publicity. We checked that story out many times, and it's true. And you can understand how this is logical in the books which you might read about doors being opened by people who want to become monks, like Yasa, one of the first monks ordained by the Buddha. And sometimes these things occur. And this is like a totally true story. American monk. Heavenly being now. Just assuming a form outside the palace, outside the monastery, and allowing this young man to come in and ordain. and helping. Honestly, that's a totally true story. Quite a few years ago now, though. So anyway, the next one. The monk, the lawyer, the general, and the king. Now this one is a great meditation story. It is not true in the sense it never really happened. It's a metaphor. I've got to be careful when I tell stories, because sometimes if I don't tell you what's actually true, the King Rama IV, that's a true story. And this one over here with the monk, the lawyer, the general, and the king, that is kind of made up, but it's a really good story. It has a great ending to it. So this, how the story which I told, I think yesterday, about the 4 doors, and I said, he said, what's actually, inside that last door? I don't know if you were speculating about it or thinking about it last night instead of having a nice sleep. But I say this because even some people, they've come up to me and said, Ajahn Brahm, please, 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 please. Where is that monastery? That also is like a metaphor. And when you start telling that story, my idea is actually to build up the sort of the excitement, or build up the tension, you might say. And I remember teaching that so many times, and people were really paying attention when he went down the last corridor to the golden door. And instead of actually hurrying along the story there, which everybody wanted, I make it very slow. And then on that door, it was just such ancient gold and some priceless jewellery. And I linger there because you know that people want to know the answer. What's behind the door? I'm not sadistic. I just want to make people understand the meaning of this. And then the abbot pauses and asks, are you ready for this? This is really, really important. And one of the monks once told me this, that he was a very, very good proofreader of books. And so he actually told me that sometimes in these stories you have to pause, like leading your audience whether you're giving a Dhamma talk or whether you are writing a book, to leave your audience just hanging there. So actually when you get to the final part of the story, it has much more effect. And then I told you that the new monk said, I've waited 2 years for this. I need to know, even if it sends me crazy, open the door. And he did. And once he opened the door, but I can't tell you. Many people should have seen it coming. That you're not monks, that's why I mentioned that. And the reason why I tell that story is that the craving to know things which are not important. Why do you have to know that? It's got nothing to do with enlightenment, nothing to do with getting deep meditation. But still, people think, let us know. And that I can't. And then you come up and say, Ajahn Brahm, look, I've known you for such a long time. Do you want a new monastery built somewhere? I'll build it for you. Oh, no. But that's what it is impressing on people, is that the suffering which comes from having to know when it's got nothing to do with your happiness, pleasure or well-being. Leave it alone. But if that answer doesn't satisfy you, if you can't sleep and you're so worried you go and see psychologists and try to get some answers, then there's only one thing you can do. Become an Anadhammasara or a monk of Bodhinyana. It takes a long time. It's a great way of recruiting people. Anyway, okay. Oh, sorry. I'm only supposed to just do this and quickly. I can't answer stories or questions quickly. It's impossible. Anyway, the other story: the monk, the lawyer, the general, and the king. Once upon a time, there was a monk, a wandering monk, an old monk, and he was very, very wise, very kind, lived very simply. It's what they call those in Sri Lanka, the Charaka monks, that go wandering from place to place. And this particular monk, it's a way of living simply, so you don't have to have any possessions. So this monk, he got to this poor farmer's house one morning with his alms bowl, and the farmer was poor, but he was very devoted, and so when the farmer asked, when he saw the monk, he said, "Please, monk, please, I'll find you some food here," and probably his own breakfast. But then he put the food in the monk's bowl, and so did his wife, and so did his 2 kids, and so did even his dog came out and wagged his tail. They were all such a kind family, and they had the opportunity of putting food in the monk's bowl. And when the monk gave them a blessing, he said, "Please, monk, have you got a place for the rains retreat yet?" And the monk said, "Actually, no." And so he said, "Please, please, please, very close to here, with a nice little river, and it's very easy for me to build you a little hut, and in that hut you can spend the rains retreat with us here. It's very quiet, it's very comfortable, we make sure we'll feed you every day. Please, please, please." And the wife bowed down to the monk, so did the 2 kids, even the dog. So, okay, he accepted. So the farmer built a little hut. It is actually easy to look after a monk or a nun. At one of these conferences we did over in New Zealand, we had one of the people invited was a Buddhist from UK, and he was an advisor to the Bank of England. He was a professor of economics. So we invited him, and at the last minute he changed the topic of his talk to the economic benefit of monks and nuns. Because a lot of time people think, what's the point of feeding monks or feeding nuns? All they do is get fat. And so what benefits does the economy get? And he was like a top economist, and he actually proved with a few statistics which he downloaded the night before that what happens is trust and honesty increase. And because of that increase in trust and honesty, the economic costs, the transaction costs of which, what happens with transaction costs? You've got to pay, you send the money to somebody, it doesn't get there on time because you never sent it anyway, eventually you send it. Sometimes there's a lot of distrust, and because of that, the economy does lose a lot. And he was saying that when there's monks and nuns around, we encourage much more precepts, much more honesty, much more trust, and because of that, the economic GDP actually increases. And because he was an advisor to the Bank of England, everyone kind of accepted that. And so, that's one of the reasons why. And he actually worked out how much it costs to look after, say, a monk for the rains retreat. Look at where we live. It's so simple. How many of you went to see my cave yesterday? How complicated is it? It's very simple, really easy to clean. So because you have a simple dwelling, it doesn't cost much. And so this man worked out how much it costs to look after a monk and to feed them. They only have 1 meal a day most of the time. That's not much, you don't eat that much. And so he worked it out, put a cost on it, only an estimate, but a pretty good cost. And he worked out the wonderful result was, it is actually, I'm not making this up, this is how he said it, it's cheaper for you to have a monk in your back garden than look after a dog. It don't cost as much. Food, and have you seen like dogs that live in a kennel? Monks live in like a cave or a cootie. And what do? You take the dog out for a walk every morning. What do you do to monks? They go off on alms round every morning so they can actually follow them. As many of you do in Nolamara. You come with me on alms round. Have you ever seen the similarities? Woof woof. And we're always very kind. We never bite. And we entertain you with silly jokes. But actually, okay, some people will feel that's a bit of offensive, but there's a lot of actually truth in there. And just how cheap it is to look after a monk. So anyway, because of that, they said it's easy for us to do. So the monk accepted, and for 3 months they looked after him. Enough food. And they got the benefits of asking any questions about meditation, even taught them meditation, even the kids. And as many of you have noticed, when meditation is being taught properly, even the dog sits down quietly and meditates with you. But then the time flew past, and 3 months finished, and that's when the monk said, I've got to carry on my wandering now. And that really upset the family. Oh no, please don't go. We really miss you. It's not a big burden feeding you. And we love the talks and the way you express the Dharma. Can you please, please, please stay? And even the wife just was saying, please. And even their kids were starting to cry. Oh, please don't go. You're like a Kong Kong for us. You know what Kong Kong means? What does it mean? Granddad, yeah. So, because I travel around a lot, I do pick up some words. And that's in Chinese. Is that in Hokkien or is it in Cantonese? Kong Kong? Just Chinese, okay. Anyway, so it was like a Kong Kong for the 2 kids. And even the dog put his tail between his legs and started to whine. The dog's way of saying, please don't go. But he said, I have to. It's our tradition. So he said, but during my meditation, I got good meditation, he said, I have noticed that closer than you think is a buried treasure. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. And it will make you happy for the rest of your lives. There's plenty of money there, you can upgrade this little hut. I can't use it, said the monk, but you can have it. And the family were really excited because old monks don't lie. Am I an old monk? But then they got excited and said, but you have to listen and carry out the instructions to the word. He said, tomorrow morning, at dawn, stand at the threshold of your house, the doorway. Pick up that bow and arrow, which I always told you to get rid of, but I'm glad you didn't. And point the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. And when the sun lifts above the horizon and clears the horizon, then let the arrow fly. Where that arrow falls, you'll find this amazing treasure. And you won't have to work so hard for the rest of your life. And he said also, this is true, follow the instructions, it will work, because I'm an old monk, and old monks don't lie. How many of you heard the story? Oh my goodness. Well, this is one who didn't put their hand up, so I'm telling the story. So, Following morning, he was up really early. He was excited. He trusted this monk. And he picked up his bow and arrow really early. He was facing the rising sun. Hadn't risen yet. And when it finally did rise above the horizon, he put the arrow in the bow and let it fly so many tens of meters. And where the arrow fell, they all ran after it. Now please don't criticize me yet, because the man gave the shovel to his wife and told her to dig. If you guys don't treat your wives fairly, then you get into big trouble, as you will soon find. So he told her to dig a hole where the arrow fell, and she dug, and she dug, and she dug, and what did she find? Only trouble. Because that land where the arrow fell belonged to a lawyer. And the lawyer so took one look at how this woman was destroying his property without authorization, and he said, "Stop! This is my property. I'm going to sue you." That's what lawyers do sometimes, especially in stories. And she said, "Not my fault. My husband told me to do this." And the husband said, "Not my fault either. This monk told me to do this." And at that, you see the lawyer stopped his anger. He said, "You say a monk told you to dig a hole here? Why?" He said, "Because this old monk said we'll find a treasure here." And that's when the lawyer said, "You'll find a treasure? Because old monks don't lie. There must be a treasure here." So, okay, we'll come to a compromise, he said. We'll do a deal. Once we find that treasure, but you'll have to carry on digging to find it, then it'll be 51% to me, 49% to you, and less costs, which go to me automatically. I don't know how lawyers speak, but that's something like lawyers say. Any lawyers here? There is one. Where are they? So anyway, so they agreed on that. They signed the contract, because you have to sign something. And so the woman kept on digging and digging and digging. And what did she find? Nothing, only more trouble. So they gave up. And then the lawyer should have asked us to begin with, what did the monk say? And the monk said, where the arrow falls, and all that story, and then dig and you'll find a great treasure. And he said, well, old monks don't lie. What was wrong with that story? And then the lawyer said, I know what's wrong with that story. You know, look at you. The poor lady's working to the bone, and she hasn't got enough strength to shoot an arrow. And he said, I will shoot the arrow tomorrow, said the lawyer. I'm much stronger. And then we'll split that, the money, 49.51. So, less my time, of course. Lawyers are very expensive by the hour. Where's the lawyer here? Anyway, we will split it. And then, so the following morning, the lawyer was there. And then in the morning, once the sun rose, he followed the instructions, pointed the arrow in the direction of the rising sun, let it fly, and they all ran after it. It did actually go further. Even the dog ran after it too. And then where it fell, a long distance, and then they dug another hole. This time, it was the farmer's job. What you tell other people to do, you usually have to do the next day yourself. Are you building a road down in? Are you telling the Anagarikas how to build the road? Yeah. Who's going to do it tomorrow? Me. Yeah. So this time they who dug it this time? I think yes. Oh, anyway, the lawyer shot the arrow, but this time the husband had to dig the hole, And when the husband started digging the hole, what did you think he found? Nothing, only more trouble. Because this time, that hole where it was dug belonged to a land owned by one of the generals in the army. And the general wasn't interested in law. He just told his junior officers, cut off their heads. It's illegal, to dig in my land. I don't care who this lawyer is, cut off his head as well. Everybody said, even the dog. Poor dog. And then, just before he got the swords out to cut off everybody's heads, that's when the lawyer said, look, it's not my fault. This woman told me there'd be a big treasure here. And the woman said, that's what my husband said, not me. And then, what are you talking about, said the lawyer. And then they told the story. And the lawyer said, I'm a Buddhist too. And I know monks, they don't lie. Now please don't argue, what is a Buddhist doing cutting off people's heads? And that's when they explained what the instructions were. That's when the general said, what do you know about shooting bows and arrows? I've been training all my life, and I'm a really good shot with bows and arrows. So we'll do it tomorrow. I'll shoot the arrow and forget about all this lawyer stuff about 49% or whatever. We'll just split it 3 ways. And one for me, one for the lawyer, one for the farmer. Where's it going? 1 for the farmer, 2 for the lawyer, 3 for me. Splitting up 3 ways. And brandishing his sword. Any arguments? Even the lawyer agreed. So the following day, he was a general, shot the arrow. And it went so much further. That was his profession. And where it fell, they all ran after it, and my goodness, even the dog was exhausted, when he actually got to where the arrow fell. And this time, whose job was it to dig the hole? Yes. So the lawyer had to dig the hole. He was not used to digging holes. And digging and digging. What did he find? Only extreme trouble. Because then it was he was a general in the Royal Army, but then the King's Army, not the army, the King's Royal Guard came up and said, what are you doing destroying royal property? It had fallen in the King's garden. And they said, don't you all know, and you should know more than anybody, General, that is a capital offense. You have to be executed. That's our law. You've been caught red-handed. So they took them into the palace, and the king was so disappointed that greed had overcome one of his best generals' decision-making powers. And now even the general was going to be put in jail and executed. But then the general said, it's not my fault. The lawyer said, we'll find a treasure here. And the lawyer said, not my fault. This man said we'll find a treasure here. No, the lady said we'll find a treasure here. No, it's this old monk said we'll find a treasure here. And at that, the king said, I'm a Buddhist too. And old monks don't lie. I have to enact the law. You all have to be executed. But I want to find out what's behind all of this. Where is this treasure, if there is a treasure? So he put all of the suspects in the jail. They were looked after well. Even the dog, got well fed, much better fed than the poor farmer's house. So the dog was quite happy. And then he sent out people to try and find. I know this goes on a long. Oh my goodness. You're going to have to answer some questions this evening. We've got to find, this old monk. he wasn't that hard to find. They soon heard word of him and got hold of him and arrested even the monk and brought him to the palace. And they had a meeting, all of them there. The old monk, the king, and the general, and the lawyer, and the farmer, his wife, the 2 kids, and the dog. And this was a matter of life and death. So they were always both really scared, except for the old monk. And the king asked the old monk, "Venerable, monks like you don't sort of lie. Why have you got all these people in big trouble?" And that's when the monk replied, "Because they didn't follow my instructions." "What do you mean?" And then the old monk said, "Your Majesty, I invite you to that house tomorrow morning. I will give you the instructions. And I want you to follow those instructions, and you'll find out. And I guarantee, where that arrow falls, you will find a great treasure. And I would ask you to split it 4 ways, equally. And your share, Your Majesty, will be enough for you to not have to raise taxes or just to try and make some more money somewhere. You'll be able to complete all your projects with ease with a lot of money left over." Imagine how much that would mean to the general who can now retire, or to the lawyer who could do more pro bono work, or to this poor farmer and his family who really struggle hard, to make enough money to feed themselves. So the king was interested. So he said, "Okay, but if you're cheating me, then of course, off with your head." So, I don't know how Buddhists can say that. But anyway, I make it up as I go along. And it has a good ending. So, the following morning, the king was there, early in the morning, before the sun rose. And the whole family were there. Even lots of the king's attendants were there. And as the sun rose, the king picked up the bow and arrow. And he looked at the monk, and the monk said, "Correct." And then he stood at the threshold of the house, the doorway, the door open. "Correct." And he waited until the sun was about to rise above the horizon. "Correct," said the king. And he pointed the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. "Correct, Your Majesty." And he pulled the arrow back, just about to shoot it. And the king said, "Wrong." And the king kind of thought, "What? What am I doing wrong?" But the king was smart. He realized that monk didn't say shoot it, he said let it fly. So he pulled his forefinger and thumb apart, and the arrow flew straight down between the king's feet. And there they dug a small hole. And what did they find? Huge treasure, enough to make the king really, really happy, and the lawyer, and the general, and the farmer didn't have to work so hard, and the kings, the children he could send overseas for a nice education, and even the dog had enough money left over to build a nice air-conditioned kennel for the dog with a little TV with what's it called, Disney Channel, so he could watch dogs beat up the cats. And he lived happily ever after. So that's actually the moral of that story. The reason why I tell it at length is because it's only a day left for this meditation retreat. Where are you shooting your arrow? Over there, over there, over there. You're going to put some more strength into your shooting, so it goes even further away from the treasure. Or are you going to follow the instructions of the Buddha? Let the arrow of craving fall. Right where you're sitting, right in this moment, right today. And there you will find a treasure greater than your most crazy dreams. And the treasure has 4 parts. Stream winning, once returning, full enlightenment. The moral of that story is right where you're sitting. So don't shoot it over there. Don't shoot it over there. Shoot it right in here. Is that a nice story? It goes on a bit, but... Okay, that's 2 questions done. I try my best. I'll try to go random. If your loved one is on a ventilator, do you have to make the decision to turn it off? Is it killing someone? What do you do? Remember, the karma is about intention. What do you mean by doing this? There's a lot of difference, I have to say this, a lot of difference between like squashing an ant and killing your mum or dad. And especially a lot of difference if there's not much life of that human being left. This is one of the similes of Buddhaghosa. He said, if that somebody falls off like a camel's back, there's so much further to fall. If they fall off like a little dog's back, it's not so far to fall. The same act can have different consequences depending on just the situation and circumstances. And so if your loved one is on a ventilator, sometimes they get beyond this by just having those advanced life directives, end of life directives, whatever it's called. And so sometimes that person makes the decision first. But even so, some of the doctors will ask the closer relations to please give us some advice. And if you do turn off that ventilator because you think that person is at the end of their life and they're given instructions for that, then is that as much bad karma as you find, oh no, I can't tell that Jhana. You find your partner while you're here meditating, they're having a nice weekend with their mistress over in Ajahn Brahm. Is there a difference there, the amount of intention or the amount of bad karma they're doing? So sometimes you can't just make a decision easily. Sometimes it is killing someone, but it's less problematic. And sometimes, what was that simile? I mentioned this simile, it just was happening when I was visiting my mother, many years ago. There was this, and it was on the news, and I sat next to my mum while this news story was being played out, because it was interesting, fascinating. There was a woman who was pregnant with twins, but because of some complication, I'm not a doctor, I've been admitted into hospital under a gynecologist, but I don't know anything about gynecology. And this woman was dying. And all the doctors, all the experts there, they were of the opinion, unanimously, that if they did nothing, that woman would die, and so would the 2 fetuses in the womb. So, if they could terminate or euthanize one of those fetuses, the other one would survive, and so would the mother. That was a choice which they had. They had what we call duty of care. And at that time, it was such an ethical dilemma for many people, that I was watching like these leaders, these bishops and other ethicists debate on what they should do. But then the doctors couldn't wait to listen to debates. The next day it was actually announced that they decided the most ethical thing to do was to terminate one of those fetuses so the mother and the other one could live. And I've often used that, a real event, to ask what you would do. Intentional killing of a fetus in a womb, or doing nothing, and the whole three of them would die. What would you do? Is killing ever ethical? And for me, it was only a test question, but I put myself in the position of that doctor, and I would probably put my hand up if I was a doctor, not a monk. If I was a doctor, then I would terminate one of those fetuses so the other two could live. What do you reckon? I'll leave it with you. While parents have given us instructions to pay respect to their tablets, urns placed in temples when they passed away, will they receive our offerings or prayers? They would have been reborn pretty quickly. Or is this act more like respecting their wishes? Of course, sometimes we can't keep the ashes there all the time, forever and ever and ever. That's one of the problems we have even in Bodhinyana Monastery. We have so many people's ashes in the wall, in the ground, with little plaques there, not just ashes, but also like people's pet dogs or cats. If you go down by the lake, you find that many are there. And you know they're not there anymore now, because if the dogs and the cats were still there, they'd be chasing around barking and squealing every night time. Dogs don't get on with cats, nor cats with dogs. Is that true? What about ghost dogs? Ghost cats? What do you reckon? A lot of times this is for the benefit of those who are grieving for the loss of loved ones. But if you ever know what happens to a loved one once they do pass away, and you had those experiences in meditation, that they are kind of free. They're free of their sicknesses, free of their injuries, free of the burden of the five sense body. So they're really quite happy. It's very rare that someone who's passed away is actually worried about how their ashes are kept. The only time, sorry these stories, but I can't help myself. The only time it is a problem, because there was this one lady a long time ago in Perth. She was a Thai Chinese. Her name was Poonsap. Do any of you remember her? Poonsap Wong? Thai people, do you remember her?
I remember the name, but can't.
Okay. But anyway, she was like a Thai lady, Chinese Thai. And the first time I kind of understood her character was when she was asking for holy water, blessing water. But she didn't want just a small amount of holy water, she wanted it by the bucket. So every week I make her 11-litre bucket of holy water. She was in a wheelchair, she was sick. But I didn't realize she wasn't that sick. Because one day, here in Bodhinyana Monastery, there was a telephone call for me, and it was from this Chinese gentleman. He said, have you got any of Ajahn Brahm holy water there? And I said, well, we make it. Oh, great. How much is it? So we don't sell it. We always give it away. We're really bad business people. We give it away. Say, no. You sell it. I usually get mine from this lady Punsap Wong. I want to cut out the middle person and get lots of it for cheap. It's very good, very effective. And that's how she got busted. She wasn't using it for herself. She got a whole 11-litre bucket and putting it into smaller bottles and selling it to her friends. She was making a lot of money. So when I told her, she went quiet. So I said, look, I'm only going to give you holy water to use for yourself, not anymore. Okay. And when I give you some, don't dilute it. So then she did behave, but she soon got sicker and sicker and sicker. And when she did get really sick, she said, look, and I know my doctors have said this, I've only got a couple of months left. And my problem now is, look, I don't trust my husband. And she said, look, he's hopeless. And I don't trust him to arrange my funeral service. So she said, Ajahn Brahm, I trust you. Will you arrange my funeral service for me? And because of my legacy, that little house we have in Maylands, we will share that. Half of it will go to my husband, and the other half will go to the Buddhist Society in Perth, to pay for the funeral services. And I told her, I can't do a deal like that. I'm a monk. She said, well, just tell your treasurer. So we told the treasurer, can we do this? And he knew about the amount this little house was worth and was split into two. And he said, it's a nice little earner. The Buddhist Society of West Australia will do well out of this. So it's not my choice. So I told her, okay, deal. And so she put it in her will that her share of the assets will go to the BSWA. But the BSWA will pay all the costs for her funeral. So that's what we did. She died, we did all the funerals, funeral. And once it was finished, then we were waiting for the will. And you know that he would hardly see him after that. We wondered where he'd gone, what had happened to him. And then one day he turned up at Jhana Monastery over the road really early in the morning. So what are you here so early in the morning for? He's in a taxi. It cost a fortune. Taxi fare from Maylands over to Jhana Monastery in Serpentine. And he said, the will, here's the will. Take it, Ajahn Brahm, now. So that's really weird. Why are you paying so much money to get in a taxi and trying to give this will to me just straight away? He said, because Punsap, she came last night. It's a ghost. You know where that will is. Get it now and take it to Ajahn Brahm as soon as possible. He was scared. He was terrified. He couldn't give me that will fast enough. So be careful. If you say you're going to do anything for the Buddhist Society of West Australia or anything good, and you decide to change your mind at the last minute, be careful. These ghosts, they know what you're up to. So he couldn't give me that will. And it's a true story, not a joke. He couldn't give it to me quick enough. And so that's one of the reasons why you have to look after your family members. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen. But the offerings of prayers, of course, if you die, what would you want? And sometimes, you work hard and you want to pay respects, not just to make good karma, but show your respects to people you loved and helped you. And so that's really important. I know for our nuns' monastery, there was one gentleman who died, and when he died, he made me the executor of his will. And when I showed it to our Buddhist lawyer, he said, look, the way this is written, you don't have to give any of these funds to the nuns' monastery. He says, as the executor, you've got free choice. You can give it wherever you want. You can give it to Bodhinyana Monastery if you will. But then I knew him, and what he really wanted was to use it for Dhammasara. So I made sure that all the, the receipts from his will went to paying off some of the debts for building Dhammasara. And the nuns' kuti, which you're staying in during this retreat, he was the one who funded it from his will. And because of that, you have a nice place to stay in. And so sometimes it's not you have to do that, but you want to actually to respect the people's wishes. And sometimes I tell you, if someone in your family dies, you don't have to actually give, and they say that please give a donation for a good cause. Don't just give a donation to Bodhinyana Monastery or Buddhist Society or West Australia or Nuns Monastery. Where they would feel happiest having that donation given. It may be to their church, it may be to like a cat's home, wherever you think they'll be happiest. That's your responsibility. That's how we worship. In a sense, we find worth in our parents, our loved ones. And our job is to associate their wishes with how to make use of their donations in the will. Does that make sense to you? Okay. That's 4 minutes past 9, and now, please excuse me, but I really did think that we could actually answer most of these questions, but each one of your questions, honestly, I found really interesting. And so I want to make sure I answer them as best. Okay, as best as possible. This last one I was just looking at, I'm going to just answer this one, can I? There's one more. Please take these and hide them. I can, but I won't. And the reason I say, well, I don't know, because you're just being really kind. It's nice. Please treat every one of the bhikkhunis or seminaries with kindness, and you'll find out then they ask questions never to challenge you. They just want to understand and have an understanding and feeling for what it's like being a bhikkhuni. So actually to contact you, they've seen you for just for 9 days. They fed you, and it's wonderful to be able to ask you, what do you need? And as a bhikkhuni or as a seminary, are you discriminated against? How can you make your life better so you feel more at ease, more free? There's some things we expect of you which are too much. So please ask these kind questions. They're very friendly bhikkhunis. And it's great they get to know you. You've seen them for such a long time. Okay, but last question. My daughter says that I have caused trauma in her life because I hit her to discipline her when she was small. Now I know I should have not done that, but what do you do now? How can you make it better for her? Now please let her know that every one of us makes mistakes. As I mentioned, this is not a human being in this world who hasn't made mistakes. I told people yesterday that one of the things I did when I was 10 or 11 years of age was making a bomb. Was that to you or just in the interview? You told me, yeah. I did tell it here, okay. Thank you for being in denial. And it didn't make... I was about 10 or 11 years of age. My friend was Christopher Nightingale, I still remember his name. And his elder brother was a chemist, and he was really smart. And all I did, I mentioned yesterday, I provided a tin can. And it worked. Once we put it all together and lit the fuse, bang! And I was so excited, I felt so good about myself that what I did was working. Until the park keeper caught us, then we're in big trouble. I know I shouldn't have done that, but at least when you make a mistake, you learn from it. The thing is, there's two things you can learn. One is make sure you never get caught again. Or the other thing is make sure you learn not to ever do it again. And that was the second thing. That's the only bomb I've ever made in my life. So, you hit a kid, your own kid. But if you did that, sometimes that's what you thought. You weren't doing it out of ill will, in the sense that you wanted to destroy that kid. But you did that because you thought that's the best way I can protect my kid later on. And you feel it doesn't work by this time. If that's what happened, please apologize to the kid. And to let her know that you feel sorry for doing that. If there's anything you can do to make it up, maybe that kid says, too late for me. But maybe there may be some society or some groups somewhere, non-violence to children or something similar to help like domestic violence victims. And give a donation to that in memory of your daughter, in honor of your daughter. Sometimes that's all one can do. Trauma happens. So once it's happened, you can't go to the past and stop it. Just make sure it never happens again. And secondly, if you have the ability to help other people who had been beaten, then do it. One of the reasons why, here I go again. Over in, Kuala Lumpur, years ago, the Buddhist Gem Fellowship, which I support. Usually go over there, teach a retreat every year or every other year. On this particular occasion, they said there was one person there who was traumatized, and there's no doctor or psychologist, psychiatrist could help her. So they asked, can I give it a try? So, if that happens, you've heard that no one else is able to help, then straight away, I have to let go of everything I've ever known or heard. Otherwise, I'll be just doing the same. So I asked her what had happened, and I made my mind perfectly quiet. And she told me about this. Please excuse me, but it's a very violent rape. She didn't say who did this, and she struggled to get the truth out of her. And as soon as she finished, I looked at her. My mind was kind of shocked, but it was also really silent. And I said to her, that was a very lucky thing which happened to you. And she was shocked that I could say something like that. But she wasn't as shocked as I felt when those words came out of my mouth. They just blurted out of my mouth. They are not willed, they're not premeditated. And that shock, she hadn't heard that one before. And then I realized what I said, and I understood why I said it. I said, I'll never know what it felt like. But there's something which I do know, that you have the strength, the character to get through this, to find a way out of this. I call it like a big black hole you've been pushed into. And when you do find your way out, the reason I say you were very lucky is because now you can put your arm around other women who have been treated so poorly like that. and you'll be able to help them. To say something which I'll never be able to say. I know how you feel. To be able to relate to a woman who's been so badly treated. And when you can do that, because it's real, it's honest, then trust will be built between you. And you will be able to climb into that black hole, hold out your hand to that poor other woman who's been abused, and show her the way out. You're lucky because you'll be able to do something I'll never be able to do, to help her. She understood. What was it doing? I never realized at the time. It was giving meaning to a very painful and unpleasant sort of experience. You give meaning to it. Wish you didn't have to, but it happened. Give it meaning, something you can use it for. And then that kind of is the first step to actually getting out of that hole. That's what I said, and kind of it worked. Again, is that okay? Make sense? Okay. But I can only do that. I was shocked what comes out of my mouth. That's why that sometimes you have to trust in the wisdom of silence. Okay. These ones over. Okay. No. Oh, these are the ones I've done. You got the other ones you've hidden. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, attendant monk. So thank you all for listening. And I apologize for some of the questions which didn't come up and weren't answered. I try my best, but you asked two deep questions which need lovely answers. Okay, so sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. Oh, by the way, well, no, I better shut up.